Welcome back. We are going to finish up our little backtrack into chapter 2 in this video today. We've got a new example right here, and I'm going to ask several questions about it, and hopefully that will review a lot of the concepts that we talked about in the last video in particular. So, I got this from a textbook that is not the course textbook, so don't go looking for this example anywhere, you're not going to find it. But let's give it a read real quick and see what we're dealing with here. A random sample of 1,200 U.S. college students was asked, what is your perception of your own body? Do you feel that you're overweight, underweight, or about right? The two-way table summarizes the data on perceived body image by gender. So you can see there how many people were female, how many people were male, and how many people felt each of those different ways about their body image. And so the first question, part A, that I want to ask, what is the marginal distribution of body image among the respondents? This video is going to be me presenting a question, asking you to pause the video, you doing that, figuring it out, and playing the video when you find out. This works best if you do it that way. If you just watch this video straight through, you're not going to learn anything. So, please pause the video, answer this question, come back when you've got it, and we'll compare. Here's the marginal distribution of body image among the respondents. Remember, the word marginal means we're looking at the totals of whatever value of variable is in the question. So if the variable is body image, we're going to look at the totals of the different body images. So we've got 855 about right, 235 overweight, and 110 underweight. That's all you need to put there. Granted, if you were doing this on a test, or like the AP test or something, you would want to put that in a complete sentence with just a little bit of context. All we really know about these people is that they're college students. So I just said students here. You would be surprised how much better that makes your response than just saying 855 responded, 235, 110. Who is it you're talking about? U.S. college students. It probably would have been even better if I said that, but at least a little bit of context, who or what you're talking about. Just the totals of body image responses. Good. Let's move on to part B. Okay, part B. If I go a little easy on you with this one, what proportion of males responded overweight? Go ahead, pause the video, answer that one. Simple enough. We just take the number of male and overweight, which is 72, right? And is that out of everyone? Is that out of all 1,200? No, it's only the proportion of males. So it's 72 out of the number of males, which is 440. So that would be about 16.4% of males responded overweight. You could have just left that as the fraction. That is technically correct. But as usual, if it asks for a proportion, I'm usually going to report that as a percentage because that is most easily digested among the general public. Part C. Part C asks, what proportion of those who responded overweight were male? Try it out. If you thought that B and C were asking the same thing, you've fallen into my trap. These are not the same because this one is asking what proportion of males did something. This, part C, is saying what proportion of those who responded overweight were something. So this is telling us what belongs in the denominator. We're not looking at everyone, and we're not even looking at all males like we were here, because the whole point is only some of these people were male. So who's in the denominator, the 235? It's these people, right? So it's kind of asking the opposite. This is saying of males who responded this way. This is saying of people who responded overweight, how many were male. And those are not going to be the same because the number of males is 440 and the number of people who responded overweight is 235. So when you're being asked questions like B or C, what I actually usually do first is look at who is it we're talking about. So if I were given C and I didn't know what it was, what proportion of those who responded to overweight were males? I know, since it's asking for a proportion, it's going to be a fraction. And in the denominator, the entire group of people we're looking at are the people who responded overweight. How many people responded that way? It was 235. That's the number I'm putting on the bottom. Out of those 235 people, which means I'm only looking in the overweight row, of those people, how many were male? 72. Okay, so that might be a general strategy. If you thought these were the same, or if you got this number wrong for some other reason, that might be something that helps as you try to answer problems that ask for proportions based on a frequency table like this, or a contingency table like this. So, next up, part D. What proportion of respondents were males who responded overweight? Based on what we've talked about, see if you can come up with this one. This answer is different yet again. Who is it we're looking at? What number is going in the denominator of this fraction? What proportion of respondents? All of them. How many out of everyone were both of these things? So, what proportion of respondents? How many of those were there? That's everybody. 1,200. How many of those 1,200 people were males and responded overweight? It's the same 72. But it's important to be able to diagnose the differences in what B, C, and D are asking because they are three different things. And the only thing different about them is who are we looking at in total? Is it males? Is it those who responded overweight? Or is it everyone? Being able to tell the difference between those three will unlock the key. It will unlock the key. I don't know what I'm trying to say there, some kind of stupid cliche. Anyway, if you understand the difference between these, you will be able to answer any type of question they can throw at you based on a table like this, which, by the way, is like a bajillion questions that you could ask. Okay, I can fill up this board 10 different times with questions based on this frequency table. Two-way table. Keep wanting to say frequency table, but there are two variables. So, I really want to hammer home B versus C versus D and the fact that they're all different. If you got them, fantastic. That will serve you well going forward. But if you had trouble, take a look at it sometime. When you're ready to go to bed, pull it up. Be like, okay, what's the difference? Got it. And you'll be asleep in no time. It'll be great. Let's check out part E. Part E. What is the conditional relative frequency distribution of gender for those who responded about right? So, part A was all about marginal distribution. Those were totals. We talked about what those were. Do you remember what it means for it to be conditional and a relative frequency distribution? Give it a shot, pause that video, come back with your best guess. For part E, the conditional relative frequency distribution of gender for those who responded about right means we're looking at all the people who responded this way, so we're only looking at the about right row of that table, the top row, and we want to know the distribution of gender conditional on that response. What percent, since it's a relative frequency distribution, what percent of the people who responded this way were each gender? So, of the people who responded about right, which there are 855 of them, how many were female? 560. What percent is that? 65.5%. So 65.5% of those who responded about right were female. The other 34.5% or male. So, however you need to rephrase this, if you need to help it make sense to you what it's asking for. As long as it makes sense to you, that's all that matters. To me, when I see the word conditional, I'm like, okay, conditional on what? Conditional on this response. That tells me where to look in the table, the about right row. What conditional on that? Well, it's got to be the other variable, which here is gender. So I know that my response is going to be something about male and female based on this response. And since it's a relative frequency distribution, percentages are what we want, not just the counts. So however it makes sense to you. If you want to, it's kind of hard on a screen, but if you were ever presented with paper, or if you rewrote the prompt and you wanted to mark the things that were important, conditional, relative, maybe conditional is pointing to about right, and you circle gender because that's what you want, okay? However you need to diagram that so that you get the answer. If you don't need to, fine, but if you do, that option is there for you. Okay. There's just one more question I'd like to ask about this table. Here it comes. Last question. You might have seen this one coming. Part F. Are body image and gender independent? Justify your answer. It's kind of sad that we have to put justify your answer, but if I didn't, people would just say yes or no. And they'd either be right or wrong. By justify your answer, you're using some kind of evidence from this table to support your conclusion. So, you might want to look back at your notes from the last video. Maybe you want to look back at the last video. Come up with something for that. Pause the video while you do. Come back when you've got your response. It should be probably a few sentences. I want to preface talking about my response here by saying there are many different ways to prove the answer to part F. I chose one particular way. You did not have to choose this way. However, your reasoning should involve the same type of logic. So let me talk about my response here. I decided to calculate the percentage of respondents who were female for the entire survey, which is 63.3%. Right? Of the 1,200 respondents, 760 were female. That's 63.3%. I know that if these two are independent, if these variables are independent of each other, then no matter what the response is, we should see this percent of female responses. That would be the only way to show that these are independent. So I calculated the percentage of respondents that were female for each possible body image response, and I found these percentages. You will notice they are not the same. They differ based on the response. So if body image and gender were independent, these percentages would be equal. I could have been a little more specific there. When I said these percentages, I should have referenced all four of these, although it really takes into account these three as well, right? If they're independent, those should be equal. It shouldn't matter what the response is. The percentage of females should be the same. Since they're not, body image response is influenced by gender. Females are less likely to say that they are underweight, according to this survey at least. If you have information on which body image type someone is, that affects how likely they are to be female. So by definition, these variables are not independent. One affects the other. So, since body image response is influenced by gender, the variables are not independent. So again, your response should have calculated some marginal percentages or some conditional percentages and determined it that way. You should have the same type of conclusion here. But what you calculated here might be different. You could have done the same thing with males. You could have done the same thing by saying, okay, the sample is whatever percent about right, and then compared that to males and females. And if those percentages were different, you would have the same answer, right? So I don't want you to get stuck on the fact that you didn't use exactly this. It's the main idea of these conditional percentages need to be the same for the variables to be independent. So that is it for this chapter 2's part of Unit 2. There's still a whole lot left in Unit 2. We're not anywhere near a unit test. But I do want to give an assessment on what we've done so far in Unit 2, these last 3 videos over bivariate data. Being able to interpret graphs of 2 variables at the same time, and being able to answer questions like these based on a two-way table. That's what you can expect from the quiz. You also have a homework assignment going back to Chapter 2. These are problems specifically about this type of stuff. So that homework and the quiz will both be due on the same day. I believe that's how it works out. Make sure to check Canvas for that. I don't want to be held to that if it's not true. But if you have any questions on the homework or studying for the quiz or anything like that, feel free to drop me an email. Stop by during my online office hours. I'd be glad to help you out. But until the next video, have a great day.